Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Scott. I'm president of the South Bend Common Council, and this is the first ever Common Council South Bend School Board joint meeting. Thank you all. We're a few minutes behind. Many of you know I'm a stickler on time, but we'll make it up. We'll get going. I'm calling to order this meeting of these two bodies. Right now, if you would, please turn your cell phones to silent, and we're going to do our invocation and our pledge. If you please stand. Mr. Teshka, did you do our invocation?
Oh, it's on me? All right. Hey, all right. Will you bow with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this historic evening and the opportunity to gather together to discuss the future of our schools, the future of our children, and the future of these two bodies working in relationship together. We ask that you would give us wisdom tonight, that you would help us to discern what is the right next step, help us to have the courage to take that step, and help all the people in this room to help us get there. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Ms. McBride is joining us. I will ask the school board clerks if they would do the roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. John Anella. Here. Ms. Leslie Wesley.
Here.
Mr. Rudy Monterosa.
Here.
Dr. Ruth Warren.
Here.
Dr. Stuart Green.
Here.
Ms. Aletha Jones.
Here.
Ms. Stephanie Ball.
Present.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask our clerks to do roll call.
Councilmember Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Teshka.
Yep.
Councilmember Miskowski.
Here.
Councilmember McBride.
Present.
President Scott.
Present.
Vice President White.
Present.
Councilmember Warner.
Enthusiastically here.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan.
Present.
Councilmember Davis. I think he's here. We saw him walk in. Oh, there he is. Councilmember Davis.
Henry's here.
Thank you. For tonight's proceedings, I will facilitate the meeting for both sides. If you have the agenda, please follow along. Also in the back, as you notice coming in, I want to thank our clerk's office for providing information on the city council, maps of the districts where everybody represents, and also information. There's also information from the school board in the back as well. So please check that out as well. So with that, I'll turn to President Anella for opening statements from the school board.
Thank you, President Scott. On behalf of my colleagues of the South Bend School Board, I'd like to welcome everyone for being here, and I'd like to thank the Common Council and the mayor and the superintendent for hosting this meeting at beautiful Nuner Fine Arts Academy. Briefly, just want to say the city of South Bend has undergone a transformation, and South Bend Schools is undergoing a transformation as well. The success of South Bend and South Bend schools goes hand in hand. Every child in this community, and frankly, this country, deserves the opportunity to receive a quality education, and that's what we're working to do in our South Bend schools. Strong public schools promote higher property values, a high-quality workforce, a thriving local economy, creating a place where people want to live and work. Frankly, it's important to everyone in this community, regardless of whether or not you have a child in the public schools. We come together for this exciting and historic meeting to begin a dialogue between our two bodies so that we may continue to move our community forward. There are a lot of new faces on this council, and there are a number of new faces on this school board. We have a new mayor, and we have a new superintendent. There's a lot of energy around moving this in a positive direction. And we've come together tonight to demonstrate to our community that we understand how important it is for us to show that we're working together for the benefit of all of you. Our community faces numerous challenges, but this also presents us with great opportunity. We realize that when we come together, we can overcome our challenges and build a better, brighter future for South Bend. So we're all in this together, and together we succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as my opening statement, I agree 100% with what President Antonella said. The way our city goes is the way our education system goes, and our citizens and our students. If you look at economic development, you look at quality of life issues that we address on this Common Council, it all stems to that basic education within our city. And this body, and I'm excited about this new council, has taken up that challenge. This was a talking point from the very beginning with just about every member here running for a campaign. So now's the time to put those words into action. I've been asked several times is like, why now? And I think President Antonella said it just plainly. We have new mayor, we have new superintendent, we have new councils, and we have new school board. Why not now? We need it right now. We need to have that conversation. So this is the time. We can't go back from the past, but what we got to do is move forward. And I appreciate everybody who's come out here, and those probably either watching at home or want to be here, that we owe it to you as well. And we owe it to the kids of our town to do the right thing. So we will be asking more from citizens on feedback of what we can do and how we work together. So in the past, it's been discussed a little bit how we go about doing this between these two bodies. But it's never come to a point until now. And I want to thank Vice President Karen White and Troy Warner, Councilmember Troy Warner, for leading the council side and bringing this forward. So there's a lot to discuss. This is really a blank page that we're going to write here and find some commonality that we can all work together for the benefit of our city. So I want to thank Nuner School, the superintendent, the mayor, school board, and this council, and the clerk's office, all for putting this together, and thank you all for being here. Now, with that said, I'll turn it over statements by Mayor James Mueller and Superintendent Todd Cummings. Gentlemen, you can decide who goes first. Flip a coin.
Flip a coin? All right. Away team goes first. Yeah. Thank you, Council President Tim Scott and School Board John Antonella, for calling this historic meeting between these two elected bodies. And special thanks to Council members Karen White and Troy Warner for all your hard work to make this possible. And to the full council and full school board, and to the members of the public, thank you for being here this evening to take part in this critical conversation. This meeting must mark the beginning of a new way forward for our city and South Bend schools. Years from now, this moment must be remembered as the time when we came together as a community and chose a new way forward. The destiny of our neighborhoods is one and the same with the destiny of our schools. Thriving cities have great schools. After decades of decline, South Bend was named the dying city nearly 9 years ago. In response, our community answered the call to action and came together to turn the corner. Today, our schools face a similar moment. We hear about declining enrollment, teacher shortages, low graduation rates, disparate discipline, and failing schools. But just as our city refused to go quietly into the night, South Bend will rally behind our schools and help them turn the corner. Our new way forward must include working together to establish a cradle-to-career learning ecosystem that sets up every child in South Bend for success. We must bring in the business community, higher education institutions, the trades, and community anchors to realize this vision. We must work together to expand access to high-quality early education and create more pathways to career opportunities. Our new way forward is not just about where we're going, but how we're going to get there. It all starts with honest dialogue and full transparency. Our community is ready to tackle the challenges ahead, no matter how hard they may be. But we cannot wait for the next election cycle to begin these difficult conversations. We cannot wait for another day. Our new way forward must generate and implement a strategic plan that our community understands and supports. This plan must answer questions such as, how can our schools right-size their operations for the number of students anticipated over the coming years? How can we increase teacher pay to attract and retain talent? How can our schools direct more dollars into the classroom? How can our schools coexist with charters that the state legislature will continue to promote? How can we turn around failing schools through empowerment zones and innovation schools? How can we achieve racial equity and discipline? This meeting tonight marks the beginning of our new way forward. Let's restart the City Schools Compact discussion together with a blank slate. Let's begin the difficult conversations right now. Let's commit to bold action to turn the corner together. Let's bring in the community from businesses to our anchors. But most importantly, let's unite around this new way forward and make sure every child in South Bend is set up for success. Thank you.
Good evening, President Scott, President Anella, and Mayor Mueller. Thank you for your words. We're thrilled to come together with our city's Common Council. This meeting, long overdue and historic, both the school corporation's elected board and the council's elected members have the parallel, overarching goal of ensuring the health and vitality of the South Bend community. Tonight's meeting can help shape the future success of our district and the community, and it's the right time for both the school board and the South Bend Common Council to leverage South Bend's momentum and upward trajectory to benefit every resident pre-K through 12. I look forward to continued collaborations with our city leaders. Just as the city of South Bend is experiencing a renewed sense of revitalization, so too are South Bend schools, turning a new page, building trust, creating transparency, and advancing opportunities for every single one of our students. This meeting is the start of a mutually beneficial partnership that we hope will have a positive impact on every citizen's well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So now, this portion is going to be 45 minutes long. If you guys are, if you have the agenda, but if you don't, what we'll do is have a 45-minute discussion between the school board members and the council members of how we can find collaboration for the betterment of our children in our school. After that, we'll look at any definitive actions that come out of this, and we'll make that statement, and then we'll have some closing statements by council members other than us. And then we're going to open it up to the floor. That would be in the same fashion that we do common council meetings, 3 minutes a person. State your idea, your concern, your thoughts, and we'll run that for about 60 minutes. So that should be about all the time that we have for this meeting tonight. We want to get everybody out of here close to 8 o'clock as we can. We did start a little late, and it is snowing. So with that, I will open it up to the school board to start the conversation, if they would please. Anybody from the school board would like to share a thought or idea? Ms. Ball.
Thank you. So in the spirit of collaboration, it is an exciting time for us to talk about how we can better leverage resources both with the school corporation and through the city. And so there are some thoughts that I've had about how we could work together. And I'm using an example that I read about with San Diego's Unified School District and the City of San Diego. And what they're doing there is they are using school corporation facilities such as the gymnasiums, the open park space, in cooperation with the City Parks Department. And what they're doing is an agreement to share amenities. And so that could be a way that would bring more community members into our school building, so there's maybe a heightened interaction between the community and the school corporation buildings themselves. It might lend itself to opportunities for volunteers who want to be in those buildings. You really need some synergy around the buildings and the neighborhoods and connections being built. So what they're doing is there's an agreement allowing community members to use those school spaces during non-school hours. So that could be an idea that we might want to think about. I think that in addition to venue, parks, and arts for the city, a great idea might be for us. I know that we use software that's in place to increase literacy. So if we had an opportunity to expand our licensing and our exposure to some of our literacy software in some different sites throughout the community, particularly honing in on the Parks and Recs, the centers where there are after-school programming and youth programming, in addition to some other facilities that are doing after-school care. There could be church sites, so it kind of goes beyond, but we really need to have a deeper penetration of our resources that we have and connecting the community to that, which could serve to enhance literacy efforts if we are putting just kind of like more connections there for that. So, starting with maybe Parks and Recs or Venue Parks and Arts, it's a new name. It's hard to get away from the old titles. Could be an idea for us to explore that I think would increase ownership and buy-in into the communities, into the buildings, and increase visibility. People can learn more about some of the programs that are offered at our different schools, very unique opportunities, which I think in our last round as school board members, we had a lot of feedback on some of the things we've been considering lately. And I think some of the feedback that I have received, and I think others would agree, is that we've had some of the best kept secrets in the city, which is astonishing. So to increase that, we don't want to be the best kept secret, we want to be the best school system in the community. So I think some of these ideas might help to bring community impact into the buildings and enhance the student environment. I don't want to manipulate or use all the time, but I got another idea. But I don't know if anybody wants to speak on that or not.
Thank you. That's excellent. That's a very good start. So any comment from council on this side? We'll do it kind of like dodgeball, maybe, back and forth. We got a line down the middle, but or more like tennis. But
That's better now.
Any thoughts from the common council?
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Hammond?
Ms. Ball, are we talking about structured after-school evening programming? Are we talking about renting out facilities for organizations? Can you give a little more detail as to what your idea is to expose the community to the facilities?
It's really an idea that we can really develop ourselves. I've just only kind of peripherally looked at what San Diego is doing, but it can be any of the above. It would be our compromise, our relationship with what we want to do. But they have an MOU in place where there's I believe some shared services of some sort going on. So actually I can dig a little deeper into what San Diego is doing, but that's just an example. Not necessarily I could say that it's a model, but I think it's certainly an idea that's worth exploring, because then we have the opportunity to expand. If you think about, I would say, quality of life and being able to add more recreational space, more facilities. I mean, I kind of was thinking, if we think about it, we practically have health clubs at all the high schools, if you think of it that way. You have facilities, weight rooms, you have pools, and so, I don't know what it would take legally, but that's why we have attorneys present, to figure out what kind of agreement, what kind of activities would we want to hold there. I wouldn't necessarily expect programming right off the top, because then it gets into who's providing the programming, but there could be community resources that come in that are willing, that don't have to be Venue Parks and Arts staff. They may not have to be South Bend Community School Corporation staff, but it's something that we can develop. It can be all that. And I think, Superintendent, we have been talking about making space in the schools available for rental. I mean, it's an idea that we've kind of talked about a little bit, but this is more what can the school corporation and the city do together.
Okay.
I'd like to add, just, Ms. Ball, since you mentioned parks and public lands, so both schools and cities are stewards of public lands in our city. Maybe we could look at the possibility of efficiencies at how we maintain parks, our school grounds, things like procure tools and equipment, looking at increased efficiencies between both entities.
Anyone else? Come on, you guys can't be shy. We're all on a board or
When did you
council.
all get quiet?
I'll go ahead and.
Ready?
Sure. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for being here from the public. That's how democracy works, when everybody appears and participates. So we are looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say as far as our community is concerned. I'm the head of the Safety and Security Committee for our board. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of as far as this committee is concerned, and Olitha Jones, my colleague, also is a member of that committee, is the fact that we work with different entities within our city. So Chief Crittenden is key in allowing us to know what is important in order to keep our students safe. Steve Miskin heads up that effort, but we also have members from the fire department, from the local health community, principals, teachers. So these are all folks from different aspects that have to do with the security of our schools. And so the fact that we're working together, I believe, is an excellent thing. And so especially when we're dealing about security, I think it's an issue that's important for the school board. It's an issue that's important for the Common Council. So I'd be interested to hear from the Common Council or from my colleagues is how we can continue to work together to keep our students safe. And so with that in mind, we're talking about law enforcement, the presence of law enforcement in our schools. We're talking about safety around our schools as far as the traffic is concerned. I know that we had an issue over at Jefferson, and we have been working with the city. We met with representatives from the city last year in order to be able to contact the Indiana Department of Transportation for them to do something about the traffic that happens in front of our schools. And so I'd just like to be able to open that up, that it's an issue that's very important, I'm sure, to many of us. But given that I'm a member of that committee, I wanted to raise it before both bodies to consider.
Okay. Anybody from council want to speak on that?
I was going to try to hold my comments till the end, but knowing me, I can't do that. At this point, I'd just like to thank the audience for being here, educators, teachers, community leaders. This is indeed a very historical time. From my perspective, and what is critical for the city of South Bend is that we have to recognize and embrace that schools cannot do it alone. We have to also recognize and embrace that the city cannot do it alone. Even though we're separate entities, we are not islands. And so this meeting is about bringing these two elected bodies to really talk about ways in which we can reach common ground, ways in which we can work collaboratively, and ways, and what would that look like for us as two elected bodies. I've always said that city can't be great without great neighborhoods. Great neighborhoods cannot be great with great citizens that are empowered and that they're valued. And so as we continue the discussion in terms of how can we collaborate together, we first need to have a vision. We need to embrace what that would look like. This meeting is just a beginning, but we don't have a lot of time. Our kids are waiting on us to get it right. And the city, we cannot survive and be a great city without great schools. We can work collaboratively together to ensure that we have the resources, that our teachers have what they need in order to be successful. They have the right learning environment, but our students, we want them to be successful too. from my perspective, sitting here, you know, I keep hearing the word historical. It is. And individuals have asked, why has it taken so long? I've asked myself that same question, but we're here. And we need to get it right. And we can get it right because we have all the resources in this community to ensure that our school corporation and the city is the very best that it can be.
Thank you, Ms. White. Any, Ms. Hannah?
Just one other piece in connection with the comment about keeping the students safe. Just to let the community know, we're well aware of the issues around policing in South Bend. It is a critical piece for the council members, each one of us, and it's right in the forefront of everything that we discuss. So as we continue to move forward with trying to find ways to keep our streets safe, that will include our school children, making sure that they're able to walk home or take their bus home and be safe when they arrive.
Ms. McBride?
I would just like to say thank you for having us, the school corporation, and to everyone here. Welcome to the 3rd District. And I just concur with everybody in what was said so far. We definitely need a vision and a strategic plan. There are a plethora of issues that we have, and I think that we can collaborate and work together and not continue to work in silos. And I think we have a lot of different programs that we are doing separately, but I think if we collectively come together as far as tutoring or finding better food options or transportation issues and pipeline to prison, and the list just goes on and on. But I think with us having conversation with one another together, we can continue to tackle all of the issues one bite at a time. So I am just grateful of being here and having the conversation and excited for us to continue to move forward. So thank you for having us.
So the Common Council, our role, just to clarify for everybody, we are the legislative body. So we look at the ordinances and laws for the city. We also are the overseers of the budget as well, which is presented by the mayor's office, their department heads, and how money is spent, and then we oversee and watch to make sure that is spent correctly. So that's some of the things that we look at, but we also advocate for the citizens and advocate, in this case, kind of for our schools as well, of what we're doing. And I did hear you on the safety side. I think there are some issues that we see in my district where there are speed issues and that. And one of the main factors that I've had complaints on is literally people running their kids to school, I won't say which school, but speeding through the neighborhoods when there are other kids walking there and parents concerned. So, you know, we got to look at that together in collaboration. It's not only just, okay, the police have to be there, but, you know, does the school board, does everybody, you know, do the principals of those schools know what's going on with that? And then it can be awareness campaign on that. But I think we're a little bit on some of the superficial items here. You know, we do have issues with schools that are struggling. So can someone kind of elaborate with that? You know, I think allowing us to have a little better perspective of that and why that is might be a way that we can help. Anyone? Dr. Cummings?
Dr. Collins?
So I would love to address that. Since I've been superintendent, we've focused on operations. We focused on ensuring that we have the 3rd lowest administrative cost of any school district in Indiana, 9.1%. That's the 3rd lowest in the state. We've ensured that we have outsourced food and nutrition services so that now 6% of our students are eating where they've never eaten before. We've doubled down on communication, where we're communicating better than ever before, using Facebook, social media, Instagram, Twitter. We've also cut nearly $900,000 out of central office. And if anyone here would like to buy it, we would like to hoist that building and sell it to someone who can use it so we can be closer to students and that we don't have to maintain that building any longer. But what happened in the process is we've laid the ground. Those are all folks who want to buy it. You can see me after this. In the process, we have focused on laying the groundwork for academics. So when you go to someone's house and you see it all done and all put together, you don't say, gee, you have a great foundation. You have to build the foundation. We understand that we have schools that need work. We have great teachers, but what we needed to do is lay a solid foundation so that they could focus on solid Tier 1 instruction. So we needed to get reading right. Our students are not reading on grade level. We needed to make sure that we had a literacy framework and a way for teachers to move forward so that they can teach their students how to read. We need literacy specialists in our classrooms. We still need staff to work with groups of students so that they can read, so they can be successful. We also know that we needed to hire socio-emotional workers to help with wraparound services for our students. Because if you, and my board was committed to that, we put a social worker in every building. Because if you can't read and you can't deal with the social issues that are going on in your home, then you're not going to be able to learn. And so we've laid the groundwork systematically. We have tiered our schools. We've rewritten job descriptions so that we have instructional leaders who are instructional leadership directors who are focused on schools who need the most support and walking with their principals and looking at academics. And we've doubled down on supporting teachers. We want to pay our teachers more. If we can put great teachers in every classroom, we can keep them where they are and they don't move building to building, then academics won't be an issue anymore. With the great teaching staff we have, we want to reward them and we want to retain them. And so we've worked parallel this year. We knew we had some operation issues that needed to be addressed. We needed better food. We've improved transportation that much, and we know that we need to continue. But all the while, we've laid the groundwork for academics, helping students read better, supporting teachers, and ensuring that we've got the groundwork of our schools so that they can be supported in the future. We're getting there. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take partnerships like this and with the community to help us see that it's a new day and that in the future, South Bend schools are going to be better, students are going to be able to read, but I also want to say what else we're doing. Not only have we doubled down on students being able to read, but this year we launched our first cohort of students who in May, when I give them their diploma, will earn their associate's degree at Ivy Tech at the same time. So we're doing great things. Flight simulators and classrooms at the airport, great things with CTE students. We're getting there. And so we want to ensure that those opportunities happen for every single one of our students.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. We did not have kids, so we didn't have any kids go through the school system. So this is really me understanding, in my years of public service, school was probably the weakest thing I knew about. So I'm going to ask as many questions as I can for you guys. But I want you guys to ask us questions too, and you know, see if there's anything that we can give back to you guys. Troy.
So,
Mr. Teshka.
I'm a worker bee. I'm a construction worker. So 6 weeks ago, Karen and I sat down. She said, "Troy, we need to make this meeting happen," and we're here tonight. So I came with some action points, some ideas, right? I think the mayor touched on one of them, and that's a rework of the compact. I'm committed to sit down and on our side and begin to rework the compact and put that together. I know there's some people on our council that don't even know what the compact is, and I see some looks over there. Mr. Mayor, I know you're familiar with the compact. Will you take a second and kind of explain what the compact, kind of what that is and what that means?
Sure. I didn't, even though I worked in the previous administration, I was not the point of contact for the compact in the previous administration. But broadly what it is cities like Miami and others have put together almost like a memorandum of understanding of how does this partnership work and where are we going to focus. I think the one reason why I suggested we start from a blank slate is you can try to be comprehensive and then you get lost in terms of, I think we want to start our focus on things that we know we can achieve and get the ball rolling, and we can always come back and amend and add further over time. But, so that's an important thing that the city, we'd love to work with the council and the school board. I've already asked my department heads to just start brainstorming what are ideas for how they might be able to help the schools and how the schools might be able to help what they're trying to do for their department missions. So that's underway from the administrative side, but that's what I think it's important to bring a blank slate and make sure that it's focused and actually means something and gets something done. But there's, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it's also just, there are a lot of, I'll say this, in my time in the city, Todd is my third school administrator or superintendent. And I am the most hopeful now than I've been in the past because I've already talked to him more. He's more open. This administration is more open, and they're open to new ideas. They're open to discussion, whereas before we got it's okay, leave us alone, everything's fine, to we need to come together and figure this out together. So that's what gives me hope, and I also know a lot of the school board members here are also, not to say anything about previous school board, but this school board and this administration is looking to come together and bring the community on board. So this is a hopeful moment. But where we go from here is we need to make sure, and so some of the things, they're so open, they're getting ahead of themselves, I would argue. They're so open and creative and innovative, they're getting ahead of themselves, and they haven't brought the community along to explain why and how. And that's why we know we're not going to have a strategic plan today or tomorrow, but we need to have a process and a plan for how to do that, how to bring the community into it so they know how they fit in. And they know how everything they know what they actually do, they're thought about, they're not, sometimes you look at public officials and they're doing things and you say, well, what's this, where do they come up with this idea? They've thought about it, but it's not, everyone else hasn't been caught up to where they are. And so this strategic planning process would help address why they're doing some of the things they're looking to do, or why are they exploring something that they're looking to explore. And I think in particular, charters is an important topic. We know if we had to choose as the city of South Bend, we would probably just invest in our public education system, and we would make sure we got the resources to make that right. But we live in the state of Indiana, and that state legislature isn't going to change anytime soon. And so we have to figure out how can we adapt to this environment that we have to live in. And we can say we don't want charter, but the state is going to continually do things that promotes them. And every time you think you get ahead, they're going to do something else. So we need to figure out what we can do. And you can't beat. They're trying to make the best of a bad situation, and we need to come together and figure out how do we thrive in the system that we have, and how do we come together to support them. So
Thank you. So I commit on our side to, I see the compact as a continuation of a dialogue, right? It's a memorandum. How are we going to work together? And that kind of solidifies these points. And I kind of commit to taking the lead on our side, huddling up with the council and getting some points together with the administration and the school board and kind of hashing that out, and potentially coming back in 6 to 9 months and having another meeting saying, okay, here's the compact, and these are specific detailed points on how we're going to work together. The second kind of roll up your sleeve thing, Mr. Monterosa, so I am the chair of the Health and Public Safety Committee. I'd love to have coffee for an hour with you, and we can sit down and potentially talk to the chief and some people from the mayor's staff and continue that dialogue about school safety. It's an issue. I talk to the sheriff regularly about it. We have concerns in the schools out in the county and how we deal with that, and have worked on getting our school resource officers updated training and preparing them for the inevitable, right? Someday that's going to happen here in our community. We can't put our head in the sand. The third kind of action item, roll up your sleeve. Great things happen in our schools every day. I've been saying this for a year now. Amazing things happen. I've had kids that have gone through the schools. I have a daughter that's in college and playing softball only because of her coaches and her teachers. I have another daughter at Clay that thrives. The arts program is amazing. I want to help you guys, and I need you to help me with the referendum, right? I think everybody here in the audience tonight, most of them want to support the schools. We want to support our kids, we want to support our teachers, and we need you guys to help us do that for the May vote. So please help us help you, okay? Those are my 3 talking points. Thank you.
Doctor?
I also have a lot of questions, and I'm also a worker bee. So we're talking about collaboration and cooperation, but I still am not clear to what end are we collaborating? What are we cooperating on? The South Bend School Board is working on a strategic plan. The one we have is outdated and irrelevant, and we're working on that. Some of the things we're talking about are equity, both academic equity and equity in the treatment of students in terms of discipline. We're talking about literacy, we're talking about family and community engagement, among other things. So we're trying to hone in on what we think is really important. And I think one of the things we have to do is figure out where that lines up with the city's strategic plan and what things are important to you. And so that's the first step. We have to figure out what we have in common that we can work together toward. The second thing I think we should think about is doing a strengths assessment. In other words, in what ways have we already worked together to promote the success of both the city and the schools? We need to do an assessment of that. I am not one to just start doing things without thinking through where we're going and what we've already done. And what we've already done is a strengths assessment. We have to figure that out. And then after that is when we can start planning on how we can work together. I would propose that we have some kind of a joint working committee to really hash some of these things out. I think the problem I had when I first saw the compact, quite frankly, is it was a lot of words that I didn't know what it was aimed at. And so I think we just have to start from the beginning, and I'd be happy to work with any of you on that.
Just one thing, Dr. Green. How many have actually seen the compact? Okay. So I kind of agree with you where that lies in the description of that. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point of looking at a working committee and figure out the end where we need to go. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Green.
I think there were some specific things within the compact that were actually quite useful, and it might be worth spelling out what some of those things are. I think the first was, and as I think about these things from the initial compact, one of the concerns I had was I didn't quite understand where the categories, where the priorities came from. In fact, the original compact had a series of issues or ideas, but not really a set of priorities. But more than that, I didn't get the sense that those priorities came from the community. So I think as we continue to work together, having open meetings for people to contribute to our understanding of what those priorities should be in the city. I know that the council took up the idea of restorative justice and perhaps having a hub. That really underscores, I think that effort underscores the fact that the schools cannot do this alone, that education is not just schooling. Education is more broad than that. It's about moral development. It's providing people with an ethical compass. And I think it's about creating the conditions within neighborhoods as well as in our schools where kids feel safe, where they're not dealing with the stresses of poverty, where they know their families are able to work, where there's affordable housing. And those few points were actually in the compact. What was not clear was how this was going to happen. And as we think about together what neighborhoods are, where do kids go to be kids? Where do they go to parks? Are they parks that are lit up? Are they free? Do they have access all day long? Where are the resources? It strikes me that one of the spaces that disappoints me, but also gives me hope, is the MLK Center. I was there recently. I think I know they're near a housing project that needs support. They need computers, they need mentors, they need more resources. And the question is, where will those resources come from? I know we've invested in parks of late, but we could do more. And I think partly what we can be thinking about together is, where do kids learn best? Kids love to learn, they don't always love school. So let's create conditions within schools and neighborhoods where kids want to learn and to be part of our communities. Probably one of the best initiatives I know of that we could cultivate is the Engaging Youth, Engaging Neighborhoods is now part of city government. Are we creating leaders? That was part of the compact. And yet there was what I'd like to see us do is to do a bit of an audit. Where are these spaces where kids can create leadership? I think the former mayor was quite helpful in making sure that the kids on the east side were able to develop Kelly Park. We could be doing that elsewhere. That's a great example of a city-school collaboration that ensures that kids are learning leadership skills, but it's also part of what the community wanted. And the kids learn to use the resources within the city. Socio-emotional learning, preschool, these were in the compact. And I think we could, again, do the audit and say, here are the people who are already doing this work. And what concerned me was that we wanted to go ahead with looking into socio-emotional learning, preschool and the like, without recognizing that other organizations like United Way were already doing these things. So to build on what I think Dr. Warren was saying is, there are some assets that already exist. We could build on those. But the things I've mentioned are specific things in the compact that actually are worth returning to. Sure. But I think having these community conversations, a charrette is typical of development for urban development. We could be doing the same thing by saying, here are the priorities that the council and the board have developed, and then have people work at tables and say, here are the things that already exist. Here's what we could be doing to build on those things. Or these aren't necessarily our priorities. Finally, I'd say equity is huge. We've had meetings, I know you've been into many of those meetings on housing. Are we seeing the world through the lens of equity? Are we providing people with equal opportunities? Are we ensuring that as we think about neighborhoods and job development, that we're thinking the fact that there are lots of people who are in situations that are not of their own making. We know of policies. We know of redlining. We know of segregation in the city. What are we doing together to make sure people have equal opportunity?
But I would like to cut in right now with that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we've been having these conversations with our neighborhood association on the west side. We've been out there on this discussion. And so since we're going to talk about redlining and resources within neighborhoods, in 2002 was the year I graduated college. It was the same year that my high school was closed because of Plan Z, okay? When we began to have that discussion, the schools turned into magnet programs. I think that's the name of the program, it became magnets. As a result, where the biggest draw was at Kennedy and was also at LaSalle, thank you. Within those areas around those two schools, the neighborhood life was sucked out of the place. Property value went down, gentrification started immediately, okay? It didn't happen immediately because it's 6 stages to it. It takes over a period of time. It's over 10 years, it goes to about 15 years. But we're in the middle of it right now. And as a result of it, me and the kids that went to those schools, me being one, are no longer being admitted into those schools. So we have to like really understand what has taken place. So, and we can't divorce ourselves from what took place, because what took place is still what's going on. Now, I'm going to fast forward past all the other details because I hope you guys already know those things. Now, as we live in South Bend, Indiana, every school west of Michigan Street, with the exception of Kennedy and LaSalle, I think they are failing. Am I correct? That is where your biggest population of African American and Latino students live. Well, excuse me, let me rewind that. Every school that feeds into Washington High School is failing. And yes, that is true. And so as a result of that, we have a problem with the level of education that is happening with those kids. I'm not saying the teachers are doing a bad job. I'm not saying they're doing a good job. I'm not saying administration is doing a bad job or a good job. I'm not saying any of those things. As a matter of fact, I'm not saying you guys are not doing a good job. What I'm saying is that you have half of a city, by the design of the map, that is suffering with the lack of resources, without proper housing, that's being over-policed or under-policed. And so these are the hardcore issues that my constituents face daily. Food deserts, right? So we are in a situation where we need these things corrected. And if we keep talking around these issues, we'll never get to the root of the problems. We never get to the solutions that are out there. I think that there is a lot of room for partnerships and collaborations. But right now, we're talking about a shortfall of a budget. Am I correct? It's like a whole bunch of, I'm trying to engage you. Are we talking about a shortfall right now of a budget? Yeah. Your budget?
Well, our budget's currently balanced, but obviously it's.
But we're talking about doing a referendum, right? You're asking me to vote for a referendum because there's going to be a shortfall. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so as a result of the referendum being out there, we have to figure out if that's even a good cause. Are we doing it so we can up services, or are we doing it to make sure services are status quo, right? And if that is the conversation, how do we move forward as a community? Because we cannot, as a city, be healthy without a healthy public school corporation. We know that. They go hand in hand. So I'm here to ask you guys, and this is the honest attempt, what can we do on our end to help? Because it's financial. All the other things come under that. But until that money is secure, we'll still have failing schools west of Michigan Street. We'll still have crime. We'll still have everything else that we're suffering from. It's money that we're dealing with. It's a hardcore issue about money. Does city of South Bend need to DTIF? These are things I'm throwing out there, right? So how do we go about making sure that we are in a position where we can service the families that we are leading?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any comment on the school board side, or? Nope.
Oh, well, Dr. Cummings can probably add to this thing, but to your point, Councilman Davis, for example, with regard to the food desert areas or places where children are not being fed, the corporation has taken steps to make sure that those children are fed, right? On holidays, we made it a point for them to be able to still get food. With regard to the resources that are available in our communities, I know that the transportation department had set up these Wi-Fi services and had partnered with other agencies in order to be able to provide Wi-Fi access so that people can have access to the internet, which, as you know, for people that are black and brown, they may not have access to that because of our socioeconomic status. So your points are well taken. I believe that it is important for us to continue to engage. I do believe that it's important that we recognize our strengths and that we also recognize our weaknesses so that we can improve those and work together with the city. Because if we don't do what's best for our youth and for our communities, then it's the city itself that suffers. But I agree with you.
Thank you. Mr. Teschka?
Yeah, so I think much of what I was going to say, much of my initial comments have been covered here in this little back and forth. And I think it's clear that we're not going to solve anything in a 45-minute discussion. And so I think I would echo Dr. Warren's suggestion that we have a working group. A lot of what is going to come of this will come of subsequent meetings hopefully some sort of joint committee.
A little closer.
You can't hear it. It's
All right.
bouncing off the walls.
Okay, all right. And then I'd also like to thank Councilman Davis for some of his comments as well. I think, one of the things is, while shared facilities and school safety and all of these things are critically important, I think the bottom line, what gets us to this table is that the schools and the cities, our fates are intertwined, right? So economically, if we don't have great schools, people won't move here, and when people don't move here, our tax base shrinks. When our tax base shrinks, there's a lot less that we can do. And that, obviously goes for the school as well. And then, mental health was issued or was mentioned over here at one point, mental health and social workers, clear connection there between, what happens inside the schools and how it affects the neighborhoods and ultimately our police department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think bottom line, if we don't call out the problem, right, the problem is that, and whether we want to discuss, the extent of the problem and those sorts of things, but when we open the paper, the South Bend Tribune, and they say that 70% of the South Bend schools are, not meeting federal guidelines in terms of performance. And when you look at grades 3 through 8, ISTEP 2018, so we'll leave iLearn alone. Obviously, there's failings there, but 24th out of 25 largest school districts just behind IPS. We've got some issues, and it's not, I don't think anybody wants to point fingers at this group of folks, and I know that, Dr. Cummings is a fresh face to the school corporation, and many of you are as well. But we've got to call out what the problem is, and so that we can address it. And I think for us, we have constituents that look to us, and they don't necessarily understand the divide between the school board and the council and the city, and they say, what can we do about our schools? And I think we are, honestly, all of us here are here because we want to help, right? And we want to see this move forward in a very positive and productive way. And I think, to echo back to what Mayor Mueller said, right? I think that starts with understanding kind of where the school corporation wants to go. That's a strategic plan. Where is this going? And then how can we help you get there? So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Teschka. We have about 3 minutes left at this section. Anything else? Mr. Davis did bring up a good point that, the city can help out with, and that is the concerns of food deserts and economic development, and that there's equity and equality in the right areas throughout our city that is going to help. I think that's one of our action items that we need to look at, probably in that joint committee that we're talking about as well. Any comments from anybody else?
Yeah, but I wanted to make sure that
Mr. Davis.
that the point is being made. Food deserts is a part of the system and the symptoms that exist. Okay, so we have a disease right now, right? And so we're sweating, we have fevers, we have chills, we have all those other things that support the fact that we're sick. The problem is that South Bend has been in a very, very bad position when it comes to expanding tax base. If we don't have tax base, we can't pay for and take care of a number of things, schools included. So what happens is that we have a very difficult time recruiting employers into the area that can employ people at a high level so they can pay their mortgage and take care of their children, take care of the things that go on that your disposable income will take care of, go to the store, buy shoes, groceries, etc. So we're like really far down right now when we starting to have this conversation about those symptoms. I'm more interested in defining them and figuring out what are we going to do to correct the illness or cure the illness. We can talk about food deserts all day long. I know they exist. There's quite a few of them in the district. I understand that, a lot of kids can't read. I go and mentor them 2 times a week. I got that. What are we going to do as leaders of the city to make sure you guys are at a very high level operating, the teachers are happy, they're working, the kids are happy because mom and dad has a job, right? It's not like we're dishing out and doing all kinds of programming, right? We want our kids to be able to go home and hang out with mom and dad and do the mom and dad thing with the kids, right? So how are we going to graduate this discussion and go to the place that says that the city is building or rebuilding itself versus programming and ideas. Because it's about tax base, it's about money, it's about jobs. This is what this is all about. If you go into any community that has a healthy tax base, healthy school corporation and jobs, you don't have these conversations. Crime is probably pretty low as well. So how do we get to that place where we can talk about jobs, we can talk about industry, we can talk about the recruitment of new employers to this area, we can talk about tax-based expansion, we can talk about how do we help our school corporation and ensure the fact that the teachers are happy, the students are happy, and guess what, the families are very, very excited. That's where I need to go. I don't want to talk about food deserts. I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. With that, our time is up in this section. It went pretty quick. So right now, I'm going to need your help. We need to look at a statement of definitive actions for the two bodies. What I've heard, and please chime in if anybody has something else. Can there be a collaboration between the cities and the schools regarding parks and use of space? Is that right? You agree?
Yes.
I mean, it's probably a little premature for me to motion to have Troy Warner and Ruth Warren chair our compact committee.
I
Our
apologize,
joint
Ms. Ball.
compact committee. Or am I jumping ahead? But I think that might be a good place for us to maybe somehow formalize that we're going to move forward with that, if that's amenable to the group.
Okay, you guys want to go through any other action items?
Yes? Pardon me?
Do you want to go through any of the action items from the discussion we just had?
No, I mean, I was just mentioning that. I mean,
Okay. Compact?
yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. What I've heard
Formation of a
is,
committee, right?
is collaboration with space between the council, or between the city and the schools, whether it's within schools or VPA. Compact, to have open meetings regarding the compact, public input within that. Further discussion on security in collaboration with the city on that. Also look at a joint working committee between this council and the school board to address goals, objectives, and vision of where we want to go with this, and part of that is related to the compact. Possible charrette on this type of topic with public input. What else? We need to look at what we can do within growing the tax base and any discussion around that, and also equity within the school corporation and with the city. Am I missing anything?
I think one of the things that we have to talk about is, I know we're moving forward, but when we're talking about the tax base and the referendum, the community needs to know how did we get here, and to understand how we got to in the deficit and why it is important to support the schools, because it affects not just the school board but the city as a whole. So when we're talking about calling a thing, putting it on the table, we have to educate people as to why we're here, and then go into the how can we help, and have everyone understand the position that we are in as a city.
Thank you. Mr. Warner?
President Scott, I just want to
Yes.
address one thing. We've been talking about the schools and the declining enrollment and the economic issues of South Bend, and obviously that's why we're here, because we're discussing all these things. And I said this earlier today to someone, you know, South Bend had 132,000 people in 1963. The city now is 101,000. Now I know the county has grown, and so the school district is a little different than the city. But you have predominantly, the population that was on the west side. 30,000 people do no longer live in the city of South Bend. So we know people aren't having as many children as they used to. We know the population is aging. We have many large footprint. Our physical footprint is on the west side of South Bend. So these are all demographic issues, and we're not sitting here to make excuses. But we face as a city, I mean, we're connected, and that's why we're having this conversation, because these are serious issues that have hurt this city, like many cities in the Rust Belt. And we seem to be turning a corner, but again, we still have a long way to go. And, you know, our median household income is significantly lower than Mishawaka, significantly lower than other communities. We've got a long way to go, so it does. It matters with economic development, it matters with jobs, it matters with equity. Where are the resources going, not only in our schools, but also in our city? And how can we, in an age of diminishing resources as well, we're going to have to figure out a way to go forward where we can pool resources and work together. And if we do it in an efficient, strategic way, then that helps all of us. And so it kind of addresses how we got here. I won't, you know, I could go into the property tax cap as well, the declining enrollment. You know, these are all things that have contributed to it. And let's be honest, we have a new board and a new superintendent, and the South Bend Schools has made a lot of mistakes in the past, and we have to own up to that. And that's where we are, and that's how we got here. And what we're trying to do at this point is say, hey, this is a new day, and we want to move forward, and we understand we can't do this alone. To borrow a quote from someone else, it really does take a village.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
Sure.
During the discussion, we heard a lot about the public schools, and we talked about something about the South Bend empowerment zones or the South Bend the schools that are charters. I guess my question is, the schools that are under the South Bend empowerment zone have a different standard that is met than our public schools. So are we going to have a discussion as far as their financing, how they're moving forward in collaboration with the same standards that the public schools are held to? Because they have the power, I believe, over many things, transportation, their teachers. I don't even know if they negotiate those teachers' salaries. And I believe that discussion needs to be made so that both the charter schools and the public schools are on the same page. I don't know if I'm out of line by asking that, but
Any comment
I
on
believe that discussion needs to be made. Are we holding those schools to the same standards?
So I will say that when I became superintendent, the board was very clear that on our way to fixing academics, that we needed to have an empowerment zone. And so we worked with the State Board of Education to take 5 of our schools, place them in a transformation zone where they would be managed by an autonomous board, that resources would flow through the zone. They would choose what shared services they have. And so there are really great models of shared services, but yet they would have autonomy. They would have autonomy over their curriculum. They would have autonomy over their start times, their end times. They would have autonomy over how their teacher leadership teams worked. We're currently working through a shared services model, what we provide and what they buy from us. So we still provide their transportation. At this moment, we provide their transportation, human resources, all the basic services. So I would welcome yet another conversation about how transformation was our first step in ensuring that we were improving academics. And we can even, it's the end of year 1, so it would be time to say, how did the empowerment zone do? And what are their plans for years 2 through 5? But we would love to have a conversation about how that was our first step of saying, we're going to get academics right. And these schools needed outside partners to help do that.
Superintendent, isn't there an upcoming conversation that you are having on empowerment zones?
There is.
Did I understand that correctly?
We're not having it. There is an upcoming community conversation about it. Yes.
Okay. We're going to move on with the agenda. So we do have a list of definitive actions from the body, so thank you. Anything else anybody want to add on the actions? We all good?
President Scott, I would just mention one thing. I know that we're all elected and we represent our prospective community members, but to the extent that we can involve the community to be involved with those conversations, in other words, to have a citizen or a community member be a designee or somebody that can participate in that, I believe that would be fruitful. And I also wanted to point out that I commend the Common Council for the Youth Leadership Council that they have, where we have youth that are involved. I believe that that's probably something that the school board or the corporation, not to put us on the spot, but might do as well, because it's always, I'm always very impressed in hearing what our youth have to say, especially when we're talking about them. I believe that they'll have a really good perspective to be able to provide for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Montrose. Ms. Wesley?
Yes, I'd like to add that we look at changing the name compact to something new that was under the old administration, and just to be very transparent as a school board member with the previous board, those of us, or some of us on the board, were not involved in those conversations. We had no input, and so I think that if we're going to start with true transparency, I think that I'd like to propose that we look at a new name.
Okay.
Because that was under the old mayor and the previous superintendent, so I'd like to propose to both boards that we look at a new name instead of compact.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We're going to move on the agenda. We're a little over time. Would one council member from this side like to make a closing statement? Oh, Leslie? For the school court? Okay. Ms. Wesley, would you like to go ahead for the school court?
I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to thank, today I've just been very excited about this historic day, and we keep saying historic because I'm a native of South Bend, and this is the first time we've had this joint board come together. And I'm very happy, and I'm trying not to get emotional, that's why I've been kind of quiet, because this is truly a new beginning. It's a new start to a new beginning, and we're moving forward. And I like to say that I was happy to hear about the transparency and that we want to be open to have community involvement. We can only go forward if we have everyone at the table. And we have to remember the most important individual is that student as we talk. The students that we serve here in South Bend, the future leaders, the future employees for our employers that are saying that they need good workers. But one of the things that I like to say is that I'd like to thank Karen White. Karen has been Karen, I'd like to say thank you, because for years you have been asking for this meeting to take place. And I'm happy to know that Councilman Warner, when you came on board to collaborate with Karen to come to us, this was Karen's vision, Karen White's vision. And I would be remiss not to say thank you, because you have been truly invested in this community. And thank you for taking the initiative, the leadership, to come forward to say, hey, this is the time is now. And so I want to say to all of the councilmen, women that are here, and also my colleagues, to our new mayor and new superintendent, thank you for taking this most important step. And I'd like to leave with everyone a quote that I look at every day by Warren Buffett. And it says, someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. And we have to plant that tree. And we have to continue to plant trees for our students here in South Bend. Thank you.
Ms. Wesley, nicely said. Thank you. Vice President Karen White will give her closing statement on this side.
I would like to say thank you to each and every one of you, the school board members, Mayor James Mueller, Superintendent Todd Cummings, you, our audience, educators, parents, students, community stakeholders. This is just the beginning. And as I said earlier, we're in this together. I can say what's not happening, what should be happening. We know that. All is not well within the city, but we are moving forward with a vision, with a plan, and we're committed to work collaboratively with the South Bend School Corporation, because we know that you are important. The work that you do, the work that the teachers do, social workers, everyone that's involved with educating our kids, you are important. We cannot be the great city that we strive to be without you. And so I know that each and every one of us, what I'm hearing at this first meeting is that we understand that we have to work together. We have to be able to have those tough conversations. We have to be able to say that we need to have this in place, but most importantly, we have to be willing to say that I'm going to do my part to ensure that South Bend Community School Corporation is the very best that it can be. Likewise, I'm going to ask you to do the same for the city of South Bend. We're joined together. If the corporation is not successful, neither will the city be. I'm not pointing fingers because we're in this together. And so we have to be transparent, we have to have plans, we have to have action, we have to make sure that those strategies are clear and that we have articulated those within, amongst ourselves, but within the community. But most important, we have to have the various constituents at the table. No longer can we work as an island. Those days are over. We have too much that we have to do. So let's get it done, bold vision, bold leadership, and making bold decisions, and we can get this done. Thank you so much.
President Scott.
Thank you, Ms. White.
President Scott, as a point of order or reference, when we reconvene this meeting, whenever that is, are we going to use the conduit or maybe a committee that this evolved out of 11 years ago? Because I think that has not been used in its full essence.
Yeah, we can look at
The
that.
council, years ago passed the ordinance to work with the school corporation.
Right.
It was loose and kind of lukewarm because no one knew what they wanted to do with it, and it caused a lot of fear. But since we're now at this place of...
It's relevant.
Yeah, now it's like really, really relevant.
Right.
Then, hopefully that we can start using, the tools that are already put in place for this meeting to happen.
And I think Councilman Davis, that would be a good refresh. So yeah, we can look at that, definitely. Okay, it is now time to turn it over to our citizens. We are going to do a privilege of the floor. We are about 21 minutes over our time limit, so we'll see how this goes. This will be a 60-minute session. I'll ask Mr. Teshka, who does it for the City Council, to keep your 3-minute time. I have a list of people who are already signed up to speak, and wait a minute, Mr. Brown, hold on a minute. We have a list of people that already signed up, and then after we get through everybody on the list, anybody else who wants to speak is welcome. So is there Roberta Hudson Stracan? Would you come up to the podium, right? Okay. And the next person behind is Eli Tricker. So if you guys want to get ready to speak, if you already signed up, you guys can kind of queue up. And you'll have, Roberta, you'll have 3 minutes, and Mr. Teshka will give you about a 30-second warning before it goes. So go ahead, state your name and address, and we'll go.
Roberta Hudson Strawn, 218 South 29th Street, South Bend, Indiana. And I had these 2 posters made today, so it's for the audience. Just hand these out because they're 2 different ones, and I want you to share them. This information I got from the South Bend Tribune, so I'm not going to even bother. I might touch on it briefly, but the main thing that I want to talk about is the zip code segregation. Everybody knows about it. Everybody does. And for those of you who don't know what it is, a child that is in McKinley's zip code, McKinley School zip code, can't go to Darden because it's not the right zip code. And so now what we have done is we've created ghetto schools with these zip codes. And you know about it. You have to know about it. And it's long overdue. Dr. Cummings and Mayor, you're brand new. You have the power and the authority to get rid of these zip code segregated ghetto schools. It's way overdue, and I didn't hear anybody here talking about this zip code. Now let me hurry up and move on. Why would you, Penn Harris and Mishawaka, they don't have any shortage of schools according to what was put in the South Bend Tribune. The South Bend School Corporation has 16 teacher vacancies. Would you expect a white teacher to go and work in a ghetto school? Now, the children in these ghettos, they're not ghetto children. I want to make that real clear. They're not ghetto children. You know what they are? These are God's children, and the leaders here don't really see them as God's children. Otherwise, you would do away with this segregated zip code, outdated system. No, as I said, you two new leaders, you have the power, you have the authority to get rid of the zip code segregation. My question is, do you have the courage? What I want to also say is, as far as money, there's a lot of money in South Bend. That goes without saying. We have a brand new shiny casino. We have all these brand new smart streets. They cost a lot of money. And so my question is, why is the money for the school system, I believe it's tied to some kind of tax referendum.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, and so the way that the money is allocated for the school system is not working. Why can't you change that criteria? Wherever they got that money for the casino and those smart streets, why can't the school corporation tap into that money? And if you don't want to change the zip code segregation, I think you should close those ghetto schools for the sake of those children.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Eli, sorry if I'm going to butcher your name, Ms. Dricker. And on deck is Vicki Miles, if you want to be ready. Go ahead.
My name is Ellie Tricker. Oh boy. My address is 1114 White Oak Drive, South Bend. So for the last year and a half, the school board knows me at least by name, because for the last year and a half I've been a self-proclaimed recess warrior, really bugging them with a lot of research about why recess and movement is super important. And the reason why I think it's valuable to mention this here in front of everybody is because we've talked a lot about the importance of mental health and recognizing where we're falling short on social emotional learning. And I think that we all acknowledge, as Dr. Green said, that education is not just about schooling, but it's about community. It's about where we learn to be people, where we learn to be engaged with our community, where we learn to be flexible and creative thinkers and good collaborators. And so there's a ton of research showing how important this is in terms of our children actually being successful both academically and economically later in life. So I really want to make sure that we are supporting our students by following current brain research. It is so important as we, thank you. If children don't feel safe, they cannot learn. So there's a lot of information showing this, that a brain that feels unsafe in any way cannot learn. So what we are doing really well is improving our food and our nutrition and getting our kids here, but keeping them warm and fed is not sufficient. We've got to give our kids a sense of belonging, and that is not just for our little kids, okay? Social emotional learning goes all the way through adulthood, right? I did not get a lot of this in my childhood, so in my adulthood as a mother now, am sort of growing my own prefrontal cortex. So I think that I want all of our little kids to be learning this and to get it, especially in adolescence. Our middle schoolers are super important because their brains are undergoing more growth and more reconstruction than any other time in their lives other than infancy. And so we need to be supporting our biological needs, the biological imperative to move, to have free play, to have a sense of autonomy in our classroom. So whatever we can do to support our teachers, that's where responsive classroom and restorative justice are critical factors here, okay? So whatever we can do to find our community stakeholders, to access them, to find more money and resources to help our teachers have strategies. How are teachers gonna feel happy and joyful in their jobs in their classroom, because they have all kinds of resources and they know exactly where to go. They've got strategies about classroom management, and we treat our children as people and not problems. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellie. Vicki Miles, please. And on deck is Sandy Campbell.
Hi, I'm Vicki Miles, and I'm the director of a local charity, So Loved, SEW Loved. We work out of the Vested Interest Building, and this issue presses every one of my buttons. You know, we work with underserved women, and teenagers. And the surface goal is to teach them sewing skills, to have personal skills, but also skills available to get jobs, okay? But we find that it does no good to teach them certain facts or skills if we don't teach to the whole person, okay? The kids we get in and the young adults who are one generation or two generations out of the South Bend schools have zero soft skills. They can't get there on time. They have no support at home to do that. They have no resources to know how to show respect to authority, to managers. They take no personal responsibility, and they have no discipline in their lives. And this comes from a combination of home, but also what we learn in the basics in school. If we don't change the trajectory of our schools in general in this country, but specifically in South Bend, we cannot change the trajectory of these children's lives. It's impossible. We get kids in, probably out of every 20 kids we get through our program, there's only 2 that know how to pick up a pair of scissors and cut a shape out of cardboard. We have to give them shapes printed on cardboard and scissors and teach them how to work their way around the shapes so they can cut out their sewing patterns. And it's because when we talk to them, they have never had paper, scissors, construction paper, glue sticks at home or in their kindergarten and first grade classes because we're so concerned about teaching to the test. They aren't developing their brains. I get maybe 1 in 15 to 20 kids in there, or young adults who can pick up a ruler and even know how to measure to a full inch or a half inch, let alone an eighth of an inch. The manufacturers coming to us are saying, train people so we can hire them in our factories. There's 1,200 unfilled sewing jobs in the 2 counties right now, and they can't hire people because they can't read simple instructions, they can't write out directions for someone else that are articulate, and they can't measure.
Thank you,
I
Madam
welcome a chance to meet with any of you and have you come down and look at the problems that we're generating.
Thank you, Ms. Miles.
Thank you.
Sandy Campbell. And I forgot to mention, please state your name and address before you start.
My name's Sandra Campbell. My address is 59110 Magnolia Road, South Bend, Indiana. I grew up in South Bend schools. I am a teacher for South Bend schools. I have taught in I hate the phrase ghetto school, and we don't have ghetto children, but I know where she's coming from. But I've worked at a school on the west side for 24 years of my life, and I have seen kids come through there that need empowerment, and we forget about that because we're so busy teaching to the test, like she said. So my career, my number 1 goal is empowerment. I mean, and I don't want to say to hell with the test, because we do teach and we try everything we can to get these kids to love and understand and to not treat each other horribly like we see when they come into our rooms sometimes. My question to you as a committee, how many of you are teachers? Okay, so we have a few. That's awesome. So as teachers, I would ask how many are going to be on this committee that are teachers or were teachers to voice their opinions, because teachers, I think, should have an input. Like you said, you should have a culturally diverse group of students having input. I 100% agree with that. But I think we also need teacher input that are culturally diverse from different parts of our city to be part of that committee. And possibly get some other organizations involved. When I had students that I was having a rough time with, some of them, just getting them involved in sports, and teachers trust me, when sports are involved and they show up to those meetings, you form a bond with those students. I I've gone to several things, whether it's wrestling, football, things I wasn't involved in, but to let them know that they're, and parents need to do that too, because a lot of my kids said my parents have never come to any of our outings or any of our sports things. So that needs to be part of it. This is all building community. But please don't think that white teachers can't teach in a black community, because they can. I promise you that.
Ms. Broden, Joe Broden. And I believe it's Lester Johnson next.
I didn't know that was a sign-in, but I'll go for it anyway. Thank you all for tonight. Thanks to individuals here in the audience. I like the concept of elevating the conversation, but I concur that a strategic planning process is the way to do it. But I also think you have to put in place the structures at a committee level that supports that ongoing. One and done won't do it. Any strategic plan that is worth the paper it's on is actually evergreen. It has to develop from your transitions out of office, your transition out of office, or the administration's time period out of office. The suggestions of incorporating teachers. Let's incorporate a state legislature in this process. Let's also, the gal who was up here and talked about brain science and how that impacts the programming and what you provide during the school day. We have experts in our community and in our region who can help inform the work on how we get to the most success on a programmatic level, on a financial level, any way that you look at your shared mission in delivering a product that works for our families and our community. In terms of, and also incorporating citizen representatives, both at all levels of the educational platforms, whether it's at the middle school, the high schools, or even the continuing education and the dual programs. The other point that I'd like to make is, aside from actually I have 4, but the efficiencies are important to look at. I concur with that, but we also have to add the word sustainability to that as well. And I love the idea of having our department chairs or department heads in our city of South Bend actually working collectively within their mission statements on their annual basis. What can they bring to our South Bend schools? Again, it's a joint endeavor and should be a joint endeavor, and that should be incorporated into the annual plans and the annual budgets of our city offices and vice versa. A question that I would like, I love, Mr. Green, your comment. I would concur that we need to blow open the concept of where education occurs in our community. It's not just in the schools, it should be in every building and in every library. And until we can wrap our heads around that as a community and actually work for it on a daily basis on any board, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's city government or it's education, school board, we are not going to solve and get our community forward in the manner that we need. Last thing, do we have a lobbyist? Do we have a lobbyist that we pay? And are we communicating our, at least what is going down at the State House? The dollars, the funding formula that we are all tied to here, those decisions are being made downstate. We need to change that in our community. Thank you.
Where was this guy in our last one?
I believe it's Leicester Johnson? Leighter? I'm reading people's handwriting, so.
Is it Leighton? Yeah.
Leighton?
Leighton.
Leighton Johnson? Okay. All right. Tawana Perry. I'm sorry. Tawana Perry? All right. Well, oh, there. There you go. Name and address, please.
Tiwana Perry, 1605 Riverside Drive. I am here to speak because, unfortunately, I had to take my daughter out of South Bend schools. The harm that is being done to our children. We want to place this issue on our parents. We have to be honest about some things. We're dealing with systemic issues. We're dealing with implicit bias issues. We're dealing with a lack of our school corporation stepping in and allowing those parents that are involved and want to be involved to come forth and be that person. I've sat down in numerous meetings dealing with situations with my own children, and I've even stated to administrators that I would be willing to be a liaison for parents that they consider hard to deal with. I don't get taken up on that. I've set up meetings. I've sat and waited in offices for hours only to be ignored. So we have to deal with those issues. Let's keep it real. We have to deal with the social, emotional, and it's not just for our students, it's for our staff, our teachers. And I don't even like to call them teachers because teachers do just that. Our educators have to be taken care of too. You cannot just say that this is a child's problem. Our children are harmed because the adults are harmed. And this comes from the top down. We have to build skills rather than teaching to the test, and I've heard that several times this evening. We have to hold our schools, our parents, our community accountable for what we are doing. You have to allow the community to come in and work with you. Don't just sit and have a meeting and then say, hey, call me up or email me, and then the emails I'm getting back are so just lame. Let's call it what it is. Student housing on the east side of town. Now this goes to the council. There's too much student housing. There's not enough housing for single parents. I was born and raised on the east side of South Bend, northeast side as you know it. My family owns homes there. I cannot allow a family member to move into my childhood home. I cannot find a house within reason to raise my 2 children in so they can stay in the John Adams district.
30 seconds.
The other thing, building change for day to day that deals with mindset. We can get creative in our curriculum. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Drew Duncan. And then on deck is Zoe Dansbury. Drew
Sorry, I don't
Duncan.
see Drew.
We'll move on to Zoe. Zoe Dansbury.
All right, I'm gonna come up here and correct my name. My name is Zoe Davis Bay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2585 Lake Pine Drive, apartment 26, St. Joseph, Michigan, but I teach here in South Bend. Because I got my degree in Indiana and I believe in Indiana schools. All right, so I currently work at Navarre Middle School. I am a first-year teacher. I heard you ask how to retain teachers, and right now the current dynamic is not it. We are in the empowerment zone, but I can assure you that none of the teachers at my school feel very much empowered. So far this year, I have received 0 help from admin as a first-year teacher. No mentor teacher, no coaching, nothing. I had to fend for myself and latch on to a veteran teacher. Also, when asked for assistance, I was given a runaround that we are working on it and you should already know this. Having acronyms thrown at my face that I don't understand, and when I ask for clarification, I am talked down to. Teachers as a whole, not just myself, have not been supported at my school. We are expected to implement programs with little to no training. We all teach ELL students, and I have yet to receive any training on how to properly teach these children that do not speak English. The policies and rules change so much that we can't keep up. Our school has a dress code and a cell phone policy. We are told to not fight with the students about these things. I've even heard students say, admin won't do anything because they're scared of us. What authority does that give us as teachers? And I keep hearing that teachers need higher pay in order to stay, but I can guarantee you that the thing that we want most is safety. This year has been so emotionally taxing that my physical health has declined. Having students curse at you every day only for nothing to happen, 15 minutes after the tardy bell and there's still about 20 kids in the hallway running rampant. We try to implement consequences in our rooms but are told this is too harsh. Accountability is never harsh. It's fair. Our school is so worried about appearing racist that they don't do anything. It doesn't matter what color you are, misbehavior is misbehavior. And trust me, I understand where these students come from. I came from a poor home, an abusive home, and look at where I am because people believed in me and told me that I could. They didn't give me a pass and treat me as a victim. And if we keep treating our students like they're victims and they can't do any better, that's all that they're ever going to see themselves as, and they won't get any better.
You have 30 seconds.
Teachers would love a higher pay, but that is not what we need to stay. We need support with both behaviors and academics, and we need to feel safe. Our students are important, but so are our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Turner. Name and address, sir.
My name is Stacy Kyrie Turner, 2639 Oak Leaf Cove, South Bend, Indiana. So I'm going to say this rationally, respectfully, and with emotional competence. But right now I'm feeling I work at Edison currently, but that's not where I started off. I originally started off at Navarre Middle School, and I had to leave for my mental health because the things that we experience there as teachers is pure hell. I'm just going to call it what it is. Being kicked so hard that it drew blood from a student, and I talked to admin about it, and their response is, what am I supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? What can we do? Having the students hit each other in class, call each other outside of their names, call me names, and have them laugh about it to our faces, to each other. What are we supposed to do? I understand that we're not supposed to go after these kids with pitchforks, but there's quite a few of them with very, very toxic behavior that's spreading to everyone and everything. When I went into work, and I had several of my colleagues crying at the beginning because they didn't want to be there, what does that say to me? What does that say to the students? They're winning, we're losing. We need help. And so far, the admin that has been placed at Navarre is not helping. We need support that isn't there. We need students that want to care. And how are the students supposed to care? Bring back something for them to care about. Because right now, they have no electives other than the ones that we force them to take. If they don't want to be there, they're going to act this way. And how are we supposed to stop that? How are we supposed to change that? I'm asking, do you guys know? Do you guys have a plan in place? Because this empowerment zone nonsense isn't working. These people making all this money at the top are ignoring us while we are struggling to fix our cars, or we're struggling to feed our families. We can't even afford to take lunch. That we have to eat the lunch that the kids eat while being charged for it and given less. That food is disgusting, but I eat it because I have no other choice. What are we supposed to do? We are the stakeholders, the students, and the staff. We need y'all to help us by getting these administrators who are all about saving face out of there. I am thoroughly grateful for my new position at Edison because I walked into that school and the atmosphere is so different. The teachers are smiling, the lights are brighter, the students act like they want to be there. There are no classes of 38. My largest class is 20. And that right there is a part of the problem as well. Focus on what we need to focus on, which is educating the students and making sure the behaviors are being punished. Because if someone's lighting people's hair on fire and they get 1 day of suspension, that's nonsense. And that's happened at Navarre.
Thank you, sir. Emily Beck. And then Mr. Samuel Brown, you're on deck.
Hello, I am Emily Beck. My current address is 523 East Mishawaka Avenue, Mishawaka, Indiana, but I am a South Bend native. I was raised on 1976 Briarway, South Bend, Indiana, for a majority of my life. So from K to second grade, I was in South Bend schools, but my parents pulled me out to go to a private school. This is why I'm making it important, because from second to sixth grade, where I should have had a teacher in my formative years, giving me the love and attention that I'm giving to my sixth graders now, I was taught by video the whole time, from Pensacola, Florida, by some random person I've never even met, and some person standing at the desk saying, hey, here's your work, do it, turn it into me, and get some arbitrary grade. I didn't feel hope until around Plan Z. So in 2002, when you graduated, I was 12 years old, about to go into LaSalle Academy that first 7th grade year. That was the first time that I felt South Bend schools where I felt like a part of something. I know I was 12, I know I was experiencing something new, but I saw the potential of South Bend schools. And I love South Bend schools, which is why it kills me that when I go into school, I have classrooms with young students who are in 6th grade reading at an emerging kindergarten level. When I have children who, I have so many ideas for project learning that I've learned from Early Childhood Development Center at Notre Dame, where they're doing project learning. I see kindergartners in that classroom doing projects together, collaboratively, collectively. I went into Navarre Middle School expecting that same thing, but what I found out was the need was greater for something more that they needed, that I needed to provide for them. I needed to provide for them that gap that they have. And it's not anyone's fault, it's just something I've observed and something that I'm trying to work with, but what I need is support. I need to feel like I can go in, try these new innovative things, and not feel like I have to have 2 students escorted out of my class just so it can function for 40 minutes. When I have 2 students who are arguing across the room, talking horrible things to each other, and I'm supposed to come up to them and try to tone it down, but then when I call security and they send them back up saying, oh, they need to stay in the classroom, they need to stay in the classroom, I want to help them, but it is up to them too. Like, I can't make them sit at a desk and do their work. I can't make them come to class on time. I can't make them do their homework.
30
I
seconds.
can't force them. And so what I want to leave on a positive note, I have been inspired by this council, I have been inspired by this board. I'm leaving you with this quote by Dr. Seuss. I know, I'm an early childhood teacher by heart. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. I believe that you guys will be helpful in solving this issue. I have complete faith in it, and I leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Okay, my name is Samuel Brown. I live at 222 East Navarre Street, City of South Bend. Let me tell you my story. Okay, I got 4 grandkids, and I'm going to tell you about this journey. Jasmine Brown, the mother, went to Raleigh, graduated, went to the University of Notre Dame, graduated from the University of Notre Dame. Let me tell you about her baby. Jasmine was a public school child. Let me tell you about her child. Indonesia Brown, which is John Adams. The white people said, the white people don't want our black kids to John Adams because they got their IB program and they only want white kids there. That's a lie. Indy went through the IB program. She graduated. She got the Eli Lilly Award. They paid her $80,000 a year to go to Navarre. She's a public school kid. Kai, John Adams, honor roll student. John Adams, honor roll student. Lanaya Brown goes to LaSalle Middle School. Honor roll student. You know what the difference in all this I'm telling you? These kids live in a 100-and-some-year-old raggedy house. Right across the street is the drug house. I went to the Common Council. I went to Ken Carter, and everybody said, why are you doing this? Indy works in the vice president's office at the University of Notre Dame. She also is a cheerleader for the University of Notre Dame, because I wanted only the best for my kids. And when you invest in your kids, you're going to get results. I fought the drug dealers. I fought everybody that would try to hurt them. Any teacher that wasn't teaching them. We had a teacher, John Adams, and he was attacking Indy. And she's a high-stakes student. He cried, I cried. He apologized to her because she got a strong family. We got to get around our kids, and we got to love them. We got to go check on them.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
And this 30 seconds will leave you with this. You can fix this. It ain't about race. It ain't about where you live. It's about whether you want to do it. We got to find school systems. But let's go help them. I went to Dr. Cummings at night about a child that ran away from home. He wanted to go back to school. I'm going 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to try to help this kid. So quit knocking our school system, invest into it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Marvin Creighton. Mr. Creighton. And Lisa DeBerry, you are on deck.
Good afternoon. My name is Marvin Creighton. I live at 305 South Lake Street, South Bend. I'm a vice president of LaSalle Park Neighborhood Association Alliance. And I've got good news for you. I've got a plan to bring money into this South Bend area. There are contractors coming in here. They're bringing help in here because we don't have help here. There are jobs here that contractors are having to get them from all over the United States because we don't have the help here. Why? We need to put trades back in the high schools. Now, I'm not talking about trade school. I'm talking about put trades back in there, and so we can prepare for apprenticeship programs. I'm a product of, I didn't go through apprenticeship, but my dad and his brothers were builders in Arkansas. And I pursued a degree in trade and building construction at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And I came here and I worked for non-union contractors for a while. Then I joined the local union. And working for those contractors, I got to learn more learn more about the trades. So after that, I went into a business, 28 years. I'm a union carpenter. I was instrumental in desegregating the carpenters local. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of money that can be made in construction, lots of it. I've got some business, I'm sure some business agents here and they can vouch for me. You know, they started maybe $23 an hour and they go all the way up to over 30, high 30. And these trade people, they've got some good benefits. They've got health insurance and a good retirement. And this is what we need so that we can, you know, create money here. When those contractors, they come in here
30 seconds.
and bring their own crew, they spend that money otherwise. We got people here that know what I'm talking about. You got Ms. Harmon there, you got Councilwoman Nagorski, you've got my man over there, you've got Mrs. Jones here. You've got people that know what I'm talking about. So let's get it together. Let's make some money.
Thank you, Mr. Creighton. Lisa DeBerry, and then John Jaworski is after her. Name and address, please.
Lisa DeBerry, 1618 Florence Avenue, South Bend, Indiana. Power to the people. Power to the people. I'm just gonna read what I wrote. Children need to be inspired to learn. Children need to be inspired to learn. Black residents and children residing in South Bend's disenfranchised and dilapidated communities that lack financial resources make it hard to focus in class and to be hopeful on continuing on to higher education. It's discouraging when our children have watched for decades in South Bend as their parents have attained education, but have also watched their jobs have withered away from the community, grocery stores have closed, pharmacies have shut down, and the absence of recreational opportunities such as skating rinks and movie theaters have been removed. I've researched the city budget over the past decade and noticed how funding have been routed away from the Black and brown communities. If the Black, also brown community, present, so I'm reading from a cell phone. For a decade, and notice how the funding have been rerouted from the Black and brown community. If we present a proposal with an appropriation and financial plan, will the city approve a necessary and mandatory $70 million allotment and budget into an already oppressed community for early childhood education, housing development, and building self-sustainability and economic communities, so we can plant that tree that our children will have the shade of enjoying in the future. Also, furthermore, I'm a community active and I organize with hundreds of parents who are exhausted because of expulsion and abuse to the children in the South Bend School Corporation, and also city council decisions pertaining to education and economic resources, not to mention the racism and abuse in the school system and the school-to-prison pipeline. We also understand that without our children in the school system, there would be no funding. I've met with hundreds of parents who are preparing to unenroll their children from the South Bend School Corporation
30 seconds.
and collectively educate our own children. If it is indeed about the mental health and success of the students and safety of the children, will the South Bend School Corporation move to support the movement to self-educate our children and also provide resources to help support the decision until the South Bend School Corporation gets it right? Also, placing more law enforcement in schools that are predominantly Black and brown when there is a distrust between law enforcement and Black in the Black and brown community causes more distrust, frustration, and discouragement.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you, Ms. DeBerry.
Right, we need that $70 million bag today.
Thank you. John Jaworski, and then Linda Lucy. Sir, sir, would you please face us, please, so we can hear? Sir, can you step at the microphone so everybody can hear you?
Quite frankly, it's only the community and the families that can solve the problem. With all due respect to the esteemed group here, not one of you can solve the problem, and it's not your responsibility. It's the parents' responsibility. First, I want to tell you where I'm coming from. I spent 17 years in this county. I became a geophysicist. I've been to all the continents of the world. I spent 30 years overseas, almost all of it in the third world. I've seen poverty like none of you have ever seen. I lived in it. And I saw third world countries go to first world countries in the span of 30 years. And I know what it takes. Now, being that I'm a geophysicist, I'm usually given the dry statistics, and I want to just remind you of some of them. 60% of the students, and it was announced a year and a half ago at one of the school board meetings, 60% of the students are reading below grade level. That's shocking. South Bend Tribune, March 29th, 2019, had a multi-page annual school report. 47% of the students are in schools that are rated D or F. That's shocking. We're losing hundreds and hundreds of students. They're just walking, they're voting with their feet, they're going to adjacent school districts. That should tell you something. And I'm going to tell you some things here which probably are not very popular. And you probably will hiss at me. To have a referendum in a few months, a mere few months, asking for more than $220 million without details on how that money is going to be spent, considering these previous statistics I just mentioned, well, that's just out of line. There are situations whereby throwing money at a problem doesn't solve the problem. Money will not solve this problem. Only an intense shift in the crucial importance of education at the parental level will solve this problem. And that involves daily involvement by each and every parent before the first day of school until they graduate from high school.
You have 30 seconds.
I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Linda Lucy. State your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Linda Lucy, and I am the NEA South Bend president. I'm speaking on behalf of members. First of all, I'd like to say thank you all for coming together, and this is a beginning. You've heard a lot of things tonight, as have we. You've heard a lot of truths. You've heard a lot of truths that need to be put right out there and brought more of. I have to say that at the heart of the referendum, teachers know this is our community, our students, our teachers, our public school, our future as a community, and our future as South Bend Community School Corporation. I personally have long believed that public schools are the great equalizer in this country. Our public schools take every child. They help children realize with some hard work and great teaching that every student can be anything they choose to be. Our teachers make dreams possible for all students. This is about our students' future. Teachers do need resources, and we need some common sense across the board. I've heard a lot of wonderful ideas tonight. I recently talked to a friend that has children in the Nevada school system where the greater Clark County shares resources for before and after school programming with their Parks Department. This community needs to understand that public schools in Indiana were pushed into a downward funding spiral beginning in 2008 by decisions made at the State House under Governor Mitch Daniels. Sadly, as well, politicians have hijacked the teaching profession in our public schools in Indiana and across the nation. My friends and fellow colleagues are not allowed to teach the way they want to teach. They have timestamps. They have, no one minds a standard. I don't know of a teacher I've ever met that didn't want a child to read. They need the conditions put in place where children can want to come to school, love to come to school, and they will learn to read. This referendum is an opportunity for the South Bend Community School Corporation, the greater corporation, to make demands, to support a new direction, to assure local control of our public school. This community cannot afford the state of Indiana to control the destiny of South Bend Community School Corporation.
You have 30 seconds.
Nor chip away at the fabric of our local public school community. We already have 5 transformation school zones under the school zone under the umbrella. This is close as this community and our teachers ever wish to come with any further splintering of this public school system. Local control is of utmost importance, and please do not forget teacher voice and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. With that, We want to be respectful of the time. We are 9 minutes over 8 o'clock. We want to thank you all for coming out. Like both these bodies have said, this is the beginning. So you have written on our slate. We will take that back, digest it, and we will have action items and next steps and next meetings to follow. So I want to thank everybody from the school board, President O'Neill, appreciate that. Dr. Cummings, thank you. Mayor Mueller, thank you. This Common Council, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Good night, everybody.